Response video to a couple of videos, one by Conference Report, another one by some Rocky guy, Rocky BR 420 or something. So anyway, he has a couple questions. General subject's going to be these value equation stuff again. So we'll just play the end part of Conference Report guy, whose video is very good. I mean, he did clarify some issues, which is really good, and I sort of like the way he described the circumstance of this conflict between our intellect and our emotions and feelings, sensibilities, generally speaking.
And this notion of value again. And I'm just wondering here, would we have the concept of value at all if we'd never had feelings? If we were completely sterile, if we were all like Data or Mr. Spock, we just didn't have this felt sense which motivates us away from fear and disgust, or motivates us towards beauty in the universe. If we'd never had those feelings, would we have understanding of value?
Yeah. Sorry, somebody's fiddling around outside. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Of course, yeah, if we were completely ignorant, then we'd be in trouble. But like Data, is a good example, I think. Although he didn't have his emotion chip, he had knowledge that humans were sentient beings. He knew what feelings were. He knew that it's really important how things feel, that you could hurt something, that something, I mean, Data wouldn't take a cat and smash it on the table because he knew there'd be a moral consequence there, a value equation consequence. And Mr. Spock, likewise, was, half human. But even Vulcans, generally speaking, I think they knew what feelings were. They just didn't allow emotions to control their intellect. So to me, that's another good example, because Mr. Spock's always been sort of my ideal in a sense, that if you could live your life as Mr. Spock, but then you shoot up a drug or something, and it breaks down that wall when you need to do the fun stuff. When it's time to entertain the human. But when the human's supposed to be functional, you allow the intellect to own the human. I mean, that's the conflict. That's what I'm saying is that there has to be this wall, and we have to, there's times when we can make concessions to the ape side, the zoo side of the wall, but when we're doing the serious business of living and interacting with other people and implicating their lives, we have to do the serious intelligence thing. And even in the way this conversation goes, like the beauty, the conflict between this notion of the universe as this beautiful universe and the notion that of this ugly universe, like there's ugliness in the universe. This argument about how we value. There's no way to describe it. We can intellectually see it. We can intellectually calculate through what's happening. Like if something happened, like Haiti. We can imagine it. We can say, okay, this many are dead, this many are injured, this many are living in shit now, this many people don't have this and don't have this comfort in their water, and all the little implications. We can kind of try to get a sense of it, or intellectually we get an image of it. But yeah, it's going to be something ultimately we're going to have to emotionally react to. I mean, emotions are what drives us. Emotions make us function, and so it always has to go through that lousy conversion process where we have to take an intellectual concept and we have to turn it into emotional action in the world. That it's just, unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be any direct connection between intelligence and our motor skills. We're projected through the world by a certain kind of passion has to be initiated for us to do in the world. So it also invades our vocabulary. So we take an understanding, like a Mr. Spock description of the reality, or a Data description of the reality, which might be like a World War II or something, where it could say like, well, 6 million quantums of sentience went through, 75 zillion begafools of suffering, and on the other side of the equation there was the satisfaction of zero meritorious desire minicules. Basically just saying that there's no, it was all about a bigoted desire on one side, the desire to have some sort of sterile, myopic, not myopic, but race cleansed society, this silly desire, and on the other side this horrible suffering imposed on these people. And it's a simple equation, but yeah, if you describe it in some sterile way, it's hardly going to motivate the animal, who has to hear something that's going to trigger reaction. You know, to get the ape to move, you kind of have to say spider, spider. You have to convert everything into something the ape understands. So you have to turn that's where we end up exaggerating and perverting description, is because we always have to bend it to fit into this ape that only thinks in terms of ugly and beautiful and tasty and revolting, and smell good, smell bad. And so the brain has to keep playing in that vocabulary, even though that vocabulary has no meaning intellectually. It's not sensible. It's not intellectually sensible vocabulary. Beauty is a bullshit term. It's a bullshit notion. It has no objective kernel of anything. And so, yeah, it's not like that's knowledge of. That is a manifestation of desire and appreciation that is completely subjective. And that's something the intelligence should be recognizing as part of this constituent of a living organism, but it isn't something that should be controlling our perception of the universe or how we describe it when we're being intelligences. Oh, man. Yeah, that's probably too sterile a description to, for people to get what I'm saying. But that's why I think that's why the wall's really important, and the wall has been completely, it hasn't been maintained, and people are playing real games with this flowery language and this. I mean, they've perverted it all with hope and this notion of freedom. I've done videos on that, but yeah, it's so obvious when you start to dissect it. There's no such thing as freedom. It's a completely bullshit word. There's responsibilities, and then everything else is yours. You fulfill the responsibilities, and then you're free. But there is no freedom. That's not the first cause. The thing that means something is the responsibility part. And so again, that word is something like morality. And I think there's just a lot of people who are just running from this idea that there's some sort of real responsibility or real morality or real value, because they don't want to be inhibited by anything. They don't want to have to apply any rational rules to their existence. They do want to live for their selfish aspirations and desires, and they want to contrive meaning where it doesn't really exist. They want to make something that they want to do that doesn't have any real productive value into something, lead heavy in terms of value, and in a sense be able to diminish the real value, which is in preventing suffering and stopping stupid reproduction and doing all the real necessary things that need to get done, the things that will be really important to the value equation. I think you even brought it up in one of your videos, a comic video done that sort of points out that there's no real point in doing your fluorescent light bulbs and your economic car and the rest of that stuff when you'll do 100 times more damage to the environment by not using a condom. It's just a fact. And it's like those facts have all gotten lost because there's so much of this pretense that this living organism, this human thing, even the human thing, like it's on some sort of grand mission that's completely separate from the animal thing. And boy, this video is really going on, so I'll finish this up and then do the other video separate. But that did remind me, what did I just say? Shit. Damn it, I lost it. Yeah, it's pretty, because I just want to make one more clarification. Oh yeah, so it's how we gain knowledge. So even if we didn't have knowledge of sentience, we could look at a planet Earth, let's say if there was no humans on it, and an intelligence could look at that planet and it could figure out that there was something important going on that was motivating these organisms. that there was some sort of attraction repulsion force that was working within them, and that they were doing something that could be they might be able to discern or qualify this thing called suffering. They could probably get a grasp of it, even though they could never taste it, never know it. Psychologically, they might be able to understand it. And we've just had a huge advantage in that we are sentient, so we've gotten the evidence directly. We haven't had to just observe it and figure it out. We've tasted it, so we know what it is. We know what pain and pleasure are, relatively. I mean, some people, like I said, I didn't know real pain till I was 30 years old. Sometimes you don't know exactly what pain is until something really happens that's really puts you in a new dimension of what the hell that word means. But we have some taste of it, some flavor of it. Every individual has some flavor by the time they're 10 years old. So anyway.